Again, it's one example. It may not be the most significant, but it's one with which I'm very familiar of being efficient in our utilization of resources. And then thirdly, we've also had lower than expected increases in certain benefit costs. We've benefited from lower than expected increases in health insurance in a couple of recent years, and even in some of our electrical energy costs. Those things are largely out of our control, and so that was fortuitous. But nonetheless, we've taken advantage of it. Thirdly, historically, we've had very strong non-tuition revenue sources. That has been a combination of our federation allocation has been extremely important to us. In recent years, notwithstanding declines in overall federation fundraising, they've made supplementary allocations to us. We've also had the Jim Joseph Foundation, which has brought in additional funds to us. The Jim Joseph Foundation, as Josh mentioned, is ending next year. The Federation is no longer making supplementary allocations, which means that because their overall campaign is declining, our allocation from Federation is declining. That's, just to be clear, is not because Federation is punishing day schools or subjecting day schools to more significant cuts than other things. They're cutting everybody, and we're taking cuts just like everybody else. We also historically have had a very steady development line. We've had about $1 million in fundraising, a little over $1 million, to our annual campaign and certain miscellaneous campaigns, and that has been incredibly helpful for us. This year, that is not the case. I'll be talking about that a little bit more and what that means for us. But historically, that has been the case. We've been able to count on that money, and that's been important to us. And our endowment has taken on an increasingly important role in helping us balance our budget. As Josh indicated, it contributed a little over $200,000 to the budget this year. Okay, so what are we facing? I think it's fair to say that we face heightened expectations, and by that I mean several things. Number one is our parents rightly demand a top-quality general education. People want they want their kids to get a good education, and that's what we're here for. In addition, we're expected to instill the love of Torah and Judaism in our children, and in many ways we're playing a role that in the past, when we were children, was played more by the synagogue and by the family. But more and more the school has been expected to fill that role through Shabbatonim, through Ongei Shabbat, through other things that, that again, 20 years ago schools really didn't do. We also want, and we're expected to try to show our kids modern Orthodox role models, and that has a variety of ramifications. Modern Orthodox Judaic teachers are harder to find and generally more expensive than teachers who are not modern Orthodox. And so, again, that has a financial ramification to it. Our parents also value extracurricular and athletic offerings, whether it's the arts program, whether it's Model UNs, mock trials, basketball team. That all goes into the school experience and what many of our parents expect, and all of that has costs associated with it. And in addition, security concerns are not inconsequential. The kinds of security costs that we incur today would have been totally unheard of 20 years ago, and as we've had to accommodate that. Okay, so in addition, challenges to enrollment. And this relates to what we were talking about a few minutes ago. We are seeing some economic attrition. Parents that simply cannot afford day schools and either don't want to apply for financial aid or don't receive an award that they feel they are comfortable with, and so we are starting to lose people to that. And I think that's something we need to watch out for going ahead. In addition, opening of new schools. Opening of new schools is a significant challenge for us. I'm sorry? No, I thought somebody was speaking. It's a significant challenge for us. As we spoke about a few minutes ago, when schools consolidate, when HTS closed, that resulted in an influx of students to our school. Similarly, when Bernstein opened, that resulted in students going to Bernstein who most likely otherwise would have been at our school. And that is something that, if that continues, that takes away a source of students that otherwise would contribute to our enrollment, which, as Josh talked about before, goes directly to our tuition income. There also are challenges that we're facing to our non-tuition revenue sources. As I mentioned, the Jim Joseph allocation is ending next year. Federation allocations are dropping because of overall drops in Federation fundraising. And most significantly, our own fundraising has dropped. We've gone from about $1.1 million in our annual campaign and miscellaneous directed donations over the past several years to probably about $900,000 this year. Hopefully, we will get close to the 1.1 million goal, and that's why I appreciated Josh's pitch for our Dave & Buster's event coming up next week. But right now we're looking at about a $200,000 discrepancy. That, just to put that in context, that equals somewhere between 10 and 16 students, depending on age. Now, it's tuition from 10 to 16 students. So that's a meaningful gap. So what are our options? Well, fortunately, because we have both benefited from good fortune and from fiscal prudence in recent years, we have some reserves, we have some time to adjust to this new reality, but we don't have a long time to adjust. And so we really have to look at where we are and figure out what it is we need to do. And as I know we're starting to sound redundant, as we mentioned already, recruitment and retention are the biggest levers for sustainability because enrollment is crucial. Every student brings in dollars, and the marginal gain from each student outweighs marginal costs associated with that student, even if that student is on scholarship. And I'm going to illustrate what I mean by that. As I said before, we have about $2.7 million in financial aid attributable to scholarship families. Those scholarship families, though, are paying tuition. They're receiving subsidies because they're not paying full tuition, but they're paying tuition. We receive about $1.8 million in tuition from scholarship families. That's about 21% of total net tuition dollars. If we eliminated scholarship, just hypothetically, to illustrate what the impact of scholarship families is on our bottom line, we would save about $1.02 million, a little over $1 million. The way we would save it is set out here on the slide. We would have one fewer class per grade in lower school, one fewer section per grade in middle school, and one fewer section per grade in upper school. Now, of course, the reality isn't going to be that neat because there might be disproportionate numbers in one division or another, but we don't know that because our financial aid process, our admissions process is needs blind, and we are not informed by the financial aid committee who receives financial aid. Only if the financial aid committee knows that, and our business office, of course, knows it, but our headmaster doesn't know it, the board doesn't know it, unless a parent voluntarily comes forward and says that he or she is on financial aid. The financial aid committee, for those of you who don't know, is comprised entirely of non-parents. So in any event, without knowing exactly who is on financial aid, based purely on the numbers, if we eliminated financial aid, we would expect to have one fewer class per grade or one fewer section per grade in each of the divisions. And that would, as I said, save a little over $1 million. But we would lose $1.8 million in tuition, as I pointed out before, because that's what those families are paying. Plus, not incidentally, but in addition, we would also lose Federation and Jim Joseph funding. Our Federation and Jim Joseph funding is given to us for scholarship families. Of course, Jim Joseph is ending next year anyway, so that would eventually be gone. But our Federation funding would continue, and we would not get that because they only give it to us because we give scholarships. So our net loss would be over $1 million, $1.15 million. So we actually would be financially, just if you purely looked at it in terms of the financial impact of our scholarship families, worse off if we did not have scholarships. In addition, of course, there are non-financial benefits to our scholarship policy. Firstly, the size of our student body allows us to have more robust course offerings. That is primarily of importance in the upper school, where we can have more electives and so forth because we have more students. We also are able to have a wider range of extracurricular and athletic offerings because we have these students. If we were a third smaller than we are today, we would have fewer sports teams, we'd have fewer extracurricular activities because we would just have fewer people. And lastly, and I think most importantly, is that our scholarship policy, all of us feel strongly, is a reflection of our values. We value rabbis, we value scholars, scientists, government employees, police officers, military, and the last thing we want to do is send a message that people who choose those professions are not welcome in our school or are not able to send their kids to our school. We're not only a school for the children of doctors and lawyers or business executives, and I don't think that's a message we would want to communicate to our children. And so it's important to us, both the board and the administration, that our scholarship policy reflect that. So what can we do? Development is incredibly important. We talked about enrollment and how enrollment is important. And I should say, by the way, that, well, I'll come back to that. So development is also important. we have our annual campaign, which goes right to our operating budget. We have our endowment, which, as Josh showed you, accounts for, this year is a little under $200,000. Next year will be a little over $200,000. We also have bequests or legacy gifts, and those are, you don't hear about those very much, particularly if you're not on the board, but they are also extremely important. We, every year, receive bequests from people, from estates, that were written into people's wills 20 or 30 years ago. And now the person's passed away, and so that money has come in, and it's put into our endowment. And we have now an initiative as part of a larger federation initiative to try to have people include the Academy as part of their legacies. And then lastly, as I mentioned before, the ground purchase campaign is important to help us plan for and also deal with unplanned needs that arise with the building. And this really needs to be a communal priority. It can't simply be a school priority. Currently, 63% of our families donate to the school every year, and we have 717 total annual donors. Both of that's from last year. Both of those numbers can be better. There really is no reason why 100% of our families shouldn't be giving something, whatever they can afford, as part of their maaser, as part of their tzedakah each year. And similarly, in a community this size, the size of the Greater Washington Jewish community, 717 donors is just not enough. Regardless of whether people have children in the school, people benefit from there being a school in the community. And that's a message that all of us need to communicate more broadly, that this is a communal obligation. It's not simply an obligation on tuition-paying parents to support. So that's development. And as I said, as we said, enrollment and development are by far the most significant things that we can do to affect the health of our school. There are other things too, and and I mentioned them here. Government aid would be great if we can increase if we can get any real money out of the federal or state government to help support the school. That would be wonderful. Maryland lags far behind many other states in the level of support that it provides to non-public schools, and for that reason, I personally I'm very involved in the Jewish Community Relations Council, which is pushing for education tax credits. I encourage all of us to become more involved in JCRC and in Federation and in other Jewish organizational bodies to try to push for that, to become involved politically, to try to get more government aid. That would be great, but of course that's not really within the control of the school, not something we can count on. Economic recovery would be great because it would lessen the financial pressure on our parents. And lastly, we are continuing to look at technology and other ways to reduce costs, but always with the requirement that it not compromise the quality of our education. If we can deploy technology in a way that helps cut costs and either maintains or even better improves the quality of education, then we will do that, but only if we can do it in that way.
And
yes, there's a question. I see. Yes.
Two questions. One, I'm not sure we can answer right now, but what is the school's position on obtaining public funding?
We want it. We want public funding. I'll tell you something. We have we have an external relations committee which is chaired by Diana Epstein and vice chaired by Alex Stone. And Diana and Alec and Jennifer Zuckerman, our development director, are regularly hosting dignitaries in our school building, whether it's county council members, state legislators. We have Congressman Van Hollen visit periodically, precisely for this reason, because we want to make people aware of the important role that we play in the community, and we want to try to generate support for government funding of some kind, whether it's education tax credits, whether it's busing subsidies, whether it's technology and textbooks, whatever it is, we want it. Unfortunately, Maryland is not the most friendly state when it comes to support for non-public schools. And so that's a long-term challenge. It's one that I personally heavily am invested in, but it is something the school certainly would want. And then the second question I see there is what percentage of non-scholarship families donate to the school annually. We can't tell you that because we don't know who is on financial aid and who is not. What I can tell you is that about 16% of our parent body, of our families, give $3,000 or more to the school each year. That's our patron category. If you give $3,000 a year, you're considered a patron as part of the patron circle. And that was last year's number, but it's probably roughly the same this year. But that's about 16%. I don't know how many people who are not on scholarship give, but frankly, to me, that isn't a tremendously relevant criterion because I think every family can give something. Even if someone is on scholarship, they're giving some tzedakah. And my point is that the school should be part of that tzedakah giving. Josh, do you have anything to add to that?
Nope, well said.